It's just so minor compared to what we're really dealing with, the issue we're really dealing with.
Have you ever encountered a false positive happening here?
Actually, I have not, but my one friend that has a kid here did. They retested her, and perfectly fine.
Okay. And she didn't suffer any penalties before that?
No.
My next question is going towards the differences between hair testing and urine testing. Obviously, hair testing goes back way farther. It's significantly more accurate and harder to cheat.
You said the hair testing
The
is?
hair testing does, but it's way more expensive on the district. For instance, for urine, alcohol's in your urine for 3 to 5 days, amphetamines 1 to 3, cannabis 7 to 30, cocaine 3 to 4, heroin 3 to 4, ecstasy 3 to 4. So basically everything's in your system pretty much less than a week besides, marijuana. Do you think that knowing this and kids knowing this, that maybe they'd be inclined to use harder drugs?
Absolutely. Kids are going to do what they can get away with. I mean, I've been here too long not to realize that. They can get away with whatever they'll get away with, they'll try. And here's the thing, the districts put their money to what is important or what they think is important. So obviously we don't think drug testing is very important at Medina. We don't, because we don't put very much money towards it. It's a buffer to get the ball rolling and get that initial look. But if we thought it was important, we test every kid. We would do hair testing. But the community, I don't think it thinks is very important, because if you did something like that, there's so many repercussions to throwing money towards just all kids get drug tested and here's how we're going to do it. But they have things to think about. I know for my kid, I'd love the hair testing for every single one of them. I want to know if they're using drugs.
Have you ever heard, maybe students specifically talking about that, like how long certain things stay in your system and almost a nervousness?
We have more of kids talking about all the kids who use drugs while they're playing sports. And they say, because they go to the same parties, they see the kids at parties, and that's the problem with random drug testing. And I won't say which sports, I won't say which kids, but it is well known in our sports community at the high school who drinks every weekend, who smokes weed every weekend, who does different drugs every weekend, who takes pills every weekend, and the kids all know it. And they always say, if so-and-so gets tested this week, they're going to be in trouble. And kids will play Russian roulette. They will. And every now and then you catch one. It's just like vaping. It's like the new craze in our school. I walk in for my duty just to check the bathroom. 3 out of 8 days I catch someone. Athletes, non-athletes, whatever they know they can get away with, they will try.
And of course, athletes, as far as urine testings, they're working out a lot. Athletes are typically leaner. They're drinking a lot of water because they're exercise, so it's probably even less accurate considering they're flushing their bodies so much.
I would agree with that.
Which is unfortunate, but they're also athletes get injured more than a regular student would, so they're going to be prescribed to things, so they're almost more, so I assume I would imagine this is why they're testing only early starting with athletes, probably because they're higher at risk as far as that goes. I mean, being prescribed some kind of codeine and then having a hard time getting rid of it.
That's actually a good question. I'd like to ask the district that. Why do we test athletes? What's the purpose? What's the reason that? Because I don't even know that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I know other programs they do overnight trips and stuff, and they're not being tested. So it kind of feels like maybe as a coach, your kids are being singled out.
Yeah.
Have you ever, let me see here. Just 1 second. So have you ever dealt with a student that tested positive? One of your kids?
Not for drugs.
Okay.
We've had kids that have been suspended in the past for drinking. And that was when they were caught by the police and then they were turned in. Or I had a kid come tell me one time that he was caught drinking by the cops before the school even knew about it. But depending on the policy in the year that it happened, because we've had it happen a few times, is sometimes if you were, in the old days, if you told before the cops told, you didn't get in trouble. But other times if you told and there was no cops involved, you didn't get in trouble at all, but they got you some help. So most of it goes untold. We're unaware. You have inklings of what might be happening, but I don't know, honestly, I see the abuse of alcohol from parents, so it's tough to believe that the kids aren't going to abuse it too as well when it's in their house and their parents are drinking and getting drunk every weekend at parties.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kids do what their parents do.
Right. And as far as peer pressure goes, do you think there's a positive peer pressure maybe having drug testing around? As in, hey, you're our point guard. My game's going to suffer a little bit if you get popped for a drug test, and you're hurting my future as well.
We talk about that in basketball at the beginning of the year about how you're making a commitment to your teammates, to yourself, to your family, to our program. I'd be naive to think that nobody drinks or has smoked weed or done some type of drug while they're on the basketball team. But I think that's why, at least in our program, we like the drug testing, because it's always that little hint out there it could happen. But also there's the peer pressure on our kids that are constantly. I know my son's a captain on our team. He's constantly talking about it to kids that don't be stupid this weekend. Every night when we get off our game, or done with our game, smart decisions. We say it to everybody. Smart decisions this weekend. But there's definitely a peer pressure, and we even tell the kids, if you're at a party, we want them to pull kids out of situations, because there's a lot of kids that just cannot say no. They can't. They're afraid of what they'll look like compared to their friends, and they're willing to risk that because the social is so much more important to them. Being accepted socially. So the peer pressure, that side of it, weighs in more than the drug testing side of it.
So I suppose, like you said, some kids just can't say no. However, they could still be peer pressured into doing something that's worse than, for instance, marijuana. Mm-hmm. And who am I to say what's better or worse?
Sure.
But the opioid epidemic.
The more addictive drugs.
Yeah, the opioid epidemic is killing people.
Yep.
And it's really bad in Ohio. Knowing that, do you think that would be considered, a disadvantage, maybe because of, urine testing not really seeing opioids that much?
Yeah.
It could be almost hurting some students.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. The better testing is going to catch more things. It's going to be safer for kids, and that's the thing. People, all this. It's the safest thing out there to keep your kids from taking drugs. What else is safer? Is there anything safer than doing a drug test? Unless you want to follow your kids around all the time to make sure they're not doing it. That's the check. That's why the court systems use it, right? Mm-hmm. The court systems use it. When you're a drug offender, they make you take a drug test to make sure you're not doing drugs. It's their check system because they have no other way to check. Well, as parents, when you were a kid, did you tell all your parents everything you were doing on the weekends? Did you tell them, hey, I went to a party and I did this, and hey, I was with so-and-so? No, you don't even know who your kids are hanging with at school most of the times. And, you know, we can look at the group. We know kids that have been caught for selling drugs and things like that. I don't know if my kids are hanging with those kids at school. So what I want to know is, are my kids taking drugs? And that's the only safe way that you can tell 100% is to do one of the high-level drug tests. And most people aren't going to pay for it on their own, so you're already paying taxes. Why not fit it in with your school system?
So you mentioned before that you don't necessarily agree with the policies of the punishments.
Yep.
Maybe it's more about helping the students and such. Have you ever experienced a student actually getting popped for a drug test and taking more of a downward spiral, like quitting their sports and you know, bad gossip about this person?
Right. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, the whole thing about gossip, you would have to, if you're going to talk about the drug testing being a negative thing for gossip, you should take away every kid's phone, because they're a lot harsher on social media of who slept with who and who's messing around with who, and this person got beat up, and social status. They're so worried about that would be in such higher place in a hierarchy than drug testing. I mean, nobody talks about getting pulled out of class. The old days in 1980s, in 1990 when I went to school, you'd get a pass. Ooh, somebody has a pass, right? There's passes literally. My study hall, I have 250 kids. I bet you we get 20 passes a day, and not one kid says anything. They have their headphones on, they're playing on their phone, they're doing homework. There's nobody saying, ooh, a pass came for you. That's such a farce when it comes to worrying about who. Nobody knows where you're going in the school, not one person. And because there's so many different passes coming from different places, counselors and advisors, and you know, we'll write a pass for a kid to come down here to PE class to make up something. Like, that is such an old school mentality. That's such an out of touch thing that people are saying. You have adults that haven't been in a high school for 20 years saying that. It's just so farce. I mean, it's no truth to that about the ridicule. Now, here's the other thing. The only way someone knows if you get busted for drug testing is if the school would tell, which they're sworn to secrecy on that, which you could file a lawsuit for, or the kid tells them. I mean, your teammates might have an inkling of it, but you don't have to tell them. There's other ways. A good coach is going to find a